All right, guys, so in this video, I'm gonna show you how to go from this to this. All right, guys, so like I said, I'm gonna show you how to shave your valve cover. So if you're wondering what I'm talking about, by shaving it on this particular valve cover, I'm just gonna get rid of these letters and numbers that are down here. So I'm getting rid of this Doc 16 valve. Much like what I've already done on the valve cover that is on my car. So it's actually pretty simple. I'm actually gonna be doing a couple things. I'm gonna be shaving this and I'm gonna be drilling it so that we can add some bungs to it for a catch can. Of course, I want to do a catch can. It'll probably be somewhere back in there, just because it's always good anyway. You're gonna have a little bit of blow by gases. In case you don't know what blow by is, basic oil or a mixture of like oil and gas and whatnot that can get past the seals and the rings and get back into your intake manifold, which kind of gunk things up over time. So yeah, so that's what blow by is, and especially because the older the engine, the more likely you are to have more blow by, especially when you do something like, again, you adding a turbo. That's a lot more pressure. Again, this engine does have 186,000 miles on it, the block anyway, so it's likely going to increase in blow by. So of course, as I push this thing, I don't want to have a lot of extra gunk kind of piling up just throughout the engine. So I'm going to go ahead and put some bungs inside of this. But of course, I want to shave this as well because I really like the way that looks. I don't like this font, quite frankly. I'm also going to get rid of this little raised area here where the factory engine cover kind of screws into. I think I may get rid of these as well. I'm just going to shave these down. That way we can fill them in with some weld. So that's pretty much all you're going to need. We're going to use a combination of, soapy water just to try to remove some of this excess dirt. Now, again, that's not really all that important because I'm not painting it just yet, but it will just make the experience of working with this thing a lot easier when I don't have to worry about, getting, extra dirt everywhere and kind of clogging up my wheels. I'm going to use that toothbrush to help me get down to some of the corners. It's always good to pick up, go to Dollar Store, Walmart, whatever, pick up a couple toothbrushes to use them to help clean some of those hard to reach spots on your car. What I have here is, of course, a grinding wheel, a grinding disc, and a flap disc. These both essentially do the same thing. It's already on here. That's good for like cleaning up areas that you don't want to actually remove metal from. That wire will actually do the job. And of course, just some blue painter's tape. Now, what I'm going to do with this is, after I clean this up a little bit, just around where I'll be working, is I'm going to lay the tape around the bottom of here. And that'll just be a visual guide so I know where to stop. Because obviously I'm going to do a couple layers of tape, so I know once I hit the tape that I need to go ahead and stop. And you don't want to end up with a wavy valve cover. That's just going to create more work for yourself. You may also want a DA sander with a finer grit so you can kind of finish it off, or just even just some sandpaper, because obviously both of these are going to be pretty aggressive. I do think I have another flap disc that's like 120, but even still, that's still going to be pretty aggressive. But of course, I guess the one concern about this is that you gouge this and you go too far. That's not that big a deal. You have to pretty much intentionally be trying to damage this thing to get all the way through it. But if you do have an uneven spot, you can always fill it in with like some JB weld later. But we're going to try to not add additional work to us. And it's better to not take off enough than to take off too much. And also, while I'm here, like I said, I'm going to be putting some bungs in this. Now, you have a couple options. Of course, your valve cover already has a couple areas for breathers on it. You have this one on the side here, and you have the one up here with your PCV. So you can just cut these off and then drill, make those holes bigger. But I don't like the way that looks. Just my catch can is going to be in the back of the engine. So I'm going to put both bungs on the back side. So I'll be using this one, and I'll probably drill another one over here. So we're just going to cut this one off. This one on the side, we're just going to cut this off and end up filling that up. And then just have the two bungs back here. All right, guys, so I didn't spend too much time doing this. And obviously, I didn't clean the middle because I won't be working with that just yet. I just cleaned the top face of it here and a little bit in the crevices. We just want to get a lot of the extra dirt and grit and grime out of these areas so it doesn't clog up our sanding tools. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut this fitting off here. And you can use the grinding wheel for this. You can use the cutoff wheel. Really, anything you have, a Dremel, you can just break this off. You can actually bend this with a pair of pliers too if you don't have anything on that. Worst comes to worst. But you should already have a grinding wheel to go with your grinder. All right, so you can see where we got that ground off. It is pretty rough. I'm going to, get this thing taped up and then grind that one down first. All right, so now that I got that taped up, I'm going to grind off this edge part and then I'll start working on these numbers. You see how quickly this goes, just to give you guys an idea. So that's a pretty good example of what I meant. So as soon as I start cutting down into the tape, I can go ahead and switch over to the flap disc because it really didn't do any damage. That's actually pretty flat. So there's very little work I have to do with that. Alright guys, so in addition to creating a bunch of mess, I'm not sure if you can see all of this. This is just aluminum shavings. I got it down pretty good. I think at this point I can go ahead and swap over to the flap disc. I did take it down some more in a few areas. And in case you're wondering why I'm moving it around so much, I'm doing that partially to help me see where I'm going. I like to keep my eye on it. So, you know, I'll hit an area and just keep moving and constantly moving. That might not be the right way to do it, but that's the way I've always done it. I just like to be extra careful with it. So, obviously where you're going, because it cuts through pretty fast. That took about a third of the time that it took me to grind away all that stuff. Because I had it already pretty well knocked out, this is a 60 grit flap disc, so it's still a pretty aggressive flap disc. So just like when you're doing body work, you may want to use a guide coat, because since, again, we will be painting this. And what a guide coat is, we'll just spray a light mist of paint over here, over this, and then sand it back down, and it'll show us any high and low spots. But we'll get to that a little bit later. The good thing about this valve cover is that it's already flat up here, so we don't have to do any work up here. Unless, again, you're trying to get rid of these things. Like, you can just focus all your efforts down here. All right, guys, so I think that looks pretty good. It's not perfect, and of course you can see where those holes were. You can still see the threads from the other half of the hole that was actually in the valve cover. So before it's all said and done, I'll go ahead and fill this in either with some JB weld or maybe just some regular weld, and then grind this back down. So as you saw, this thing works pretty quick. Again, you got a nice aggressive flap disc on here, and it makes quick work with this whole process. So now we can go ahead and remove the tape and start the finishing process. So something else to be aware of, you can see where this factory port is above the baffle. So when you put you drill your hole for your fitting, you want to make sure you stay above that baffle. So I'm looking at somewhere in this area. The factory area, it's already cut out because they knew they wouldn't put that port there. So I'll just do, you know, what I can, get a nice big area cleaned up and smooth out. That way we can go ahead and get that bung in there. Now also, that'd be a perk of using this side, because obviously with this, again, the hose already there, it's already flat, and you have, you know, the hose that's running from here, and then the hose is running all the way around. Of course, over here we've got intercooler piping, we've got the radiator hose around this area. I really just want to clean the engine bay up, and the easiest way to do that is, again, just go straight to the back. On this valve cover, this fitting it looks like it's plastic or rubber, so I should be able to pull that out. Now, a lot of valve covers I've seen, whatever this fitting is for this vent, you can either unscrew it or take it out. Most time it's not molded into the valve cover. So we're just gonna clamp these down. That's half of it out. All right, so something else I didn't even think about until just now. You have to be really careful about taking this little plastic piece out. You don't want it to fall inside. You know, fortunately, I got mine out in just a bunch of pieces. But that's something to be careful of, because you do have this baffle here. This valve cover had that little plastic piece for that back fitting, but the one that's on my car actually has this screw-in piece. So it's actually a little bit different. Not sure if you guys can see that. Let me bump. It's actually different. So I'm not sure if that has more to do with the year of the valve cover, or just because this head I know came off a Kia, and that valve cover came off of a Hyundai. But that's something to consider. Either way, it doesn't make a difference because they'll both work. But again, there's something to be aware of. All right, so when you get ready to go have your bungs put in and drill your hole, it really doesn't matter as long as it's above where that baffle is, where they go. Again, you can put them on the front, you can put them on the top, you can put them on, you know, you can put them on the sides over here. It's really about just, again, for aesthetics. Now, of course, these will be welded in, so it doesn't have to be perfect. But so, of course, these holes don't need to be perfect. Of course, this fitting does have a little lip on it, so that'll hide if your hole's just a little off. I'm just trying to widen this one up a little bit so that this will sit flush. I'm actually going to use my drill with a step bit on it. As you can see, that step bit made pretty quick work of that. Again, this is aluminum, it's soft. And this is an old bit too, so it's not as sharp as it used to be. And it should be pretty obvious, but I'll mention it anyway. Is you see doing this, it creates a lot of shaving, so you definitely want to have this thing washed clean. All right, guys, so it's pretty much done now. Like I said, fortunately, I didn't get too many gouges in it, so it wasn't that big a deal and didn't take that long. So it wasn't really that big a deal to sand it back down. Now to sand it down, I did end up using this little palm sander here. I do have an air like DA sander, but I don't have any pads for it, actually, which I didn't realize. So I went ahead and used this thing, which did take a little bit longer, but you know, it did work. As you can see, the results are pretty good. It is nice and flat. There's a few areas I want to go over again, but overall, like I said, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm gonna go ahead and head over to Trey house, see what he's up to, and drop this off. Look, plus we got the Civic, the CRV, which you saw putting in work, towing the blunt. Got a Civic that's getting a B swamp, and of course the Integra, which you guys haven't seen that much. I got some clips that we'll put in at some point. This thing's actually pretty quick. And I'm just gonna do a little slight rebuild on this. Is that it? You check that out, see if you can do something with that. But these are the coolant overflows. I got some stuff over here we can do with that. Pretty simple design. Actually, hold on. Made it. Look at that. Can't get no better. It's perfect. Yeah. Perfect. There we go. Then I'll get me my good old TIG aluminum practice. Of course, if you follow him, which you should, his channel's link is down in the description. The reason he's loading that race car up in the trailer is because he's going to have it tuned here in the next couple days. So like I said, power goal 650. 650? So we'll see. I'm going to try to make it up there, but we'll see how my work schedule is.
I think with 650, I think I have some fun with that. Right. Definitely be more power I've had before.
All right, guys, so this is pretty much the final product here. I did go ahead and use some JB Weld just to fill in a few areas, just to smooth this bit out here where the little posts were, where these things were right here. And of course, he did a good job as far as getting these bungs welded in. Like, so now I'm gonna take this to the powder coater and drop it off, and I'll be back to you guys with the finished product. All right, guys, so it's a couple days later. I actually just picked the valve cover up from the powder coater. A couple things I wanted to make note of. And I didn't realize this until afterwards. Of course, when I initially shaved the valve cover, I had planned on painting it, but then later on, I decided to powder coat it. So of course, with that, what I learned is you really don't want to use JB Weld on the valve cover. The reason is, and this is what the guy explained to me, is because the aluminum and the JB Weld will heat up at different rates, and it can cause the JB Weld to crack, or even if it doesn't crack, then it could release gases, which will cause some imperfections in the powder coat. So I actually do have one spot on the valve cover where it looks like a bubble came out of the JB Weld. But overall, it looks really good. The color looks amazing. Now, I'm not going to show you guys the valve cover in this video. You got to stay tuned for that because obviously I did have bungs. So I will be doing a catch can install, and that I will show you the color. But especially in direct sunlight, the color looks amazing. So you guys stay tuned for that. Make sure you check out that video when it drops. But with that said, I want to thank you guys for watching my video. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys later.